Hi, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about mental health and like self-care. And I think like there's a lot of kind of like shame and embarrassment around, looking after ourselves. Especially something like maybe going to a counsellor or something like, which I have been to a counsellor before. And I never would have like told anybody that. Well, obviously apart from like my family and my husband, I would have been like really embarrassed to tell anyone about it. And yeah, I think like for some reason, I don't know why, but there is a lot of, kind of shame and embarrassment around looking after our mental health. Yeah, and just there recently, I started working with like a life coach, and even just like telling anyone about that, like it's something that's really embarrassing, because I just think people are going to be like, oh my god, like, who does your one think she is, like a life coach? And it's kind of seen as like something that's maybe like a bit like self-indulgent, or we kind of see investing money in like something like a life coach or going to counselling or whatever it is, we kind of see that sometimes as nearly like a selfish thing, and like a self-indulgent kind of thing. And I just think like it's sometimes like looking after ourselves and our mental health or well-being can be like at the very bottom of our list. Like there's so many things on our to-do list, like we're so busy these days, but sometimes I think a lot of the time taking care of ourselves and of our minds is at the very bottom of the list. Yeah, one thing I was thinking, like it's so bizarre that like in today's world, like the average person like spends like hundreds of thousands paying on a house, like paying that off, usually in a mortgage or whatever. And we kind of just do that because that's like the norm. But we see like investing money in ourselves, or looking after our mental health, or self-care, whatever you want to call it, we kind of see that as like a luxury. We don't really see it sometimes as like a necessity. And yeah, I just think it should be at the top of the list. Looking after your mental health should be at the very top. Yeah, so as I did say, like I have been to a counsellor before. I only ever went once because I only felt like I needed to go that once. And the reason for that is, well, first of all, the reason that I went to the counsellor, I would say it was probably like social anxiety, which is something that I've probably always kind of had. But when I was pregnant with my second child, I was really like low in iron, and had been at the doctors with a very bad iron deficiency. And I just felt like extremely anxious, to the point where I was nearly like afraid to leave the house. I was afraid to bump into people and talk to people and stuff, and I just knew like it wasn't normal. So I went to the doctor anyway. Even like going to the doctor was such a scary thing to do, but as I had a 3-year-old at the time, and like she was my only child at the time, and it was just more so I think for her that I went to the doctor, because I was like, no, I don't want to live my life just being afraid. Like I knew I had to do something about it anyway, but really thinking of her really made me just go to the doctor and do something about it. So anyway, when I told the doctor, she referred me to like a psychologist. So when I went to the psychologist, and I only ever went once, and the reason I only ever went once was because I went in and I told her about all the feelings that I was having. And when I told her, she literally, like she wasn't shocked, she wasn't surprised one bit. She just was like, oh, like all them things that you said are completely normal. Like, so I see so many women every day, and like they all feel like they've all felt like that at some stage. And I think that was like all I needed to hear. It was just like a weight was lifted off my shoulder, just to hear like that, okay, I'm not like a weirdo, this is like actually really normal. And I think that's where the danger really lies sometimes. I think it's a very dangerous thing to just keep everything bottled up and to not tell anyone about it, and to not look for help when you need help, because I think what happens then is it all kind of festers inside of us. And sometimes, well, a lot of the time I think we are our own kind of worst enemies, and we're not very nice to ourselves. So when we're feeling like weird thoughts or whatever, we kind of like dramatize it all in our heads, and could just make it out like much bigger than what it is. And I think you know, that's the good thing about, you know, talking to people about how you feel, is that it's like a weight's lifted off your shoulder, and you feel like, okay, it's actually not as bad as I thought it was. Yeah, so I suppose I just wanted to say, like, you know, if you are feeling down, if you feel like something's not right, you know, like, put looking after yourself at the very top of your list. You know, do something about it if you're not feeling, you know, 100%. And not even like, I don't think we should even wait until, you know, we get to that stage where we're having a bit of a breakdown, or, you know, a midlife crisis, or, you know, whatever. Like, we should just be looking after ourselves and our heads, like, all the time. It should just be like a daily thing that we do all the time, and we shouldn't see it as like a luxury thing. It should just be something that we always do, because I think, especially as a mum, I think sometimes, like, you know, if you have kids, you kind of think like that looking after them and the house is like the most important thing, but I think looking after your mental health should always be at the top of the list. And I don't think doing that is ever at the expense of your children or of the expense of anyone else. I think it's like, I do it like for my children, because I want to set a good example for them, and I want them to, you know, look after their own heads and their mental health when they get older. So I want to set that example for them. So that was all I really wanted to say. And just, yeah, if you're not feeling right, like, you know, do something about it, because I think, you know, the bad, like, these thoughts that we have in our heads, or the demons in our heads, whatever you want to call it, like, they don't go away. Like, we can distract ourselves with things like, you know, being busy or whatever it is, but, you know, that kind of, the demons in your head, I suppose, will always keep coming back to haunt you until you do something about it. Yeah, and like, so as I said, I started working with like a life coach, and so like I remember like telling my mum that I was doing this, and she was like, what, you're spending how much a month on what? Like, you know. And I think that even like when I told my husband, like when I was telling him about it and that I wanted to, you know, spend the money on it, he was kind of like, what are you talking about? Like, and I think that's, you know, that's the pretty common reaction. It's like, but like, there's nothing wrong, like, you don't, you know what I mean? We kind of think that unless there's something severely wrong with us, you know, that it's fine. Like, we don't have to, you know, think about our heads or anything like that. And yeah, I just don't think it's the right way to think about it. I think, you know, we spend so much of our lives kind of saving for a house, or, you know, working at a job or whatever it is, and it's like, we see those things as so important, but like, I mean, and it is important, you know, it can be important as well, but I mean, if you spend your whole life paying for a house, and you have this gorgeous house, and you have it paid off one day, you know, that's all well and good, but if you haven't been looking after your head and your mental health along the way, like, what does any of it matter if you don't, you know, you don't feel good? So yeah, that was all I kind of wanted to say. So anyone listening to this video, like, you know, I hope you're okay, and if you're not okay, I hope that doing something about it is at the top of your list and not at the bottom of your list, because we really should all be looking after number one, which is ourselves, obviously.